Good afternoon, Bristol colleagues. Welcome to this Keeping Bristol Safe Partnership webinar, where we will be discussing the findings of the National Child Safeguarding Practice Review for Arthur, Labinjo-Hughes and Star Hobson. The review was published in May 2022. The webinar today is being facilitated by Kevin Buck from Bristol City Council, Christina Windsor from Avon and Somerset Police, and Dr. Emma Bradley from Health. The webinar is being recorded to enable access for all colleagues across the Bristol safeguarding system to ensure they've got access to this. So can I please ask that you ensure your videos and microphones are switched off throughout the presentation by the facilitators. There will be an opportunity for a question and answer session at the end of the webinar, where the recording will be paused to offer a safe space for those questions and answers. And what I will say is there'll be a pause and reflection points throughout the webinar where colleagues that are facilitating the session will ask you to put your thoughts into the chat function on Zoom. So please get comfortable with knowing where the chat button is with regards to Zoom today. And lastly, thank you for your time in coming to hear the learning from this particular webinar today. We really appreciate that. So just before we move on to actually discuss any content from our facilitators, I just wanted to cover a safety agreement and a self-care reminder. When we discuss child protection themes and harm to children, this can have an impact on us. It could be triggering or cause distress at any point, and that's due to both our professional or our lived experience lens. Please step away if you find that the webinar is having an impact on you, and please remember and remind yourself of our self-care routes that we have available. They'll look different for all of us, but family, friends, peers and managers within our setting or organisations, and most of us have some form of occupational health or employee assistance programme that can support us with our self-care. I'll now hand over to our excellent facilitators for the session. So Kevin, Christina and Emma, thank you also for your time as facilitators today in terms of delivering this content. I'll equally switch my video off now and hand over to Kevin for the first slide, please.
Yeah, thanks, Nat. Morning, everybody. I'd like to start off by giving you an overview of who Arthur and Star were. And really, I'm just going to read from the slide at the moment in time. Arthur was a little boy who loved playing football and cricket. He enjoyed school. He had lots of friends and was always laughing. He died in Solihull, aged 6, on the 7th of June 2020. His father's partner, Emma, was convicted on the 1st of December 2021 of his murder, and Arthur's father, Thomas, was convicted of manslaughter. They are now both serving prison terms. Star was an inquisitive toddler who loved to listen to music and would dance in her baby walker, laughing and giggling. Star died in Bradford, aged 16 months, on the 22nd of September 2020. Her mother's partner, Savannah, was subsequently convicted of murder on the 15th of December 2021. And her mother, Frankie, was convicted of causing or allowing her death. They too are currently in prison. Sorry, I'm just waiting for my computer to play catch up. So from a children's partnership perspective, the inquisitiveness of partners to look into the circumstances of both these children were both triggered in their respective areas by the partnership, and they both undertook their own local child safeguarding practice review. But due to similar themes and the need to review the safeguarding system as a whole, the local reviews were ended and replaced by a national child safeguarding practice review. And this was conducted by the national panel. In light of this national panel, also reviewed other safeguarding serious incidents over a 3-year period, as well as Arthur and Star's cases to identify systemic learning from child protection systems in the UK. The aim of the review was to consider lessons learned as to why services and systems around both these children were not able to protect them. The contribution of the family was unique and crucial in really understanding the lived experiences and the day in the life of both of these children. The review also considered the lens of the impact of COVID-19 and how that affected service delivery, and and also the impact of harm experienced given that both Arthur and Star lost their lives during the pandemic. So the 4 key issues really that was identified, and we'll come back to good practice to counteract these later in the webinar. And again, you can see for yourself those 4 key issues were weakness in information sharing and seeking within and between agencies, a lack of robust critical thinking, and a need for sharper specialist child protection skills and expertise. And all underpinning these issues is need for leaders to have a powerful enabling impact on child protection practice. I think that's really important for us all, really, creating and protecting the optimum organisational conditions for undertaking this complex work. Again, the 2 overarching important factors reviewed the need for robust specialist multi-agency arrangements, with investment also in specialist child protection and expertise across the system and at both the local and national level to respond to significant harm from abuse and neglect for children. They also highlighted fragmented arrangements. Despite the best intentions of reforms, the design of multi-agency child protection arrangements sometimes inhibited professionals from having a real clear, accurate and contemporaneous picture of what is happening to children in the context of their family life. The child's story is often held by multiple people in multiple places, the detail of which is consistently evolving. This means it can be extremely difficult to build and maintain an accurate sense of what life is actually like for a child, without really a forensic focus held by a consistent set of multi-agency professionals who are charged with pulling together the parts of the jigsaw of a child's life. While working together is encapsulated in working together guidance, trust, shared values and identity are critical and crucial behavioural factors in frictionless sharing of information between professionals. Redesigning of the Child Protection Service. The National Panel believe that the way we approach child protection in this country needs to change fundamentally. The importance of effective multi-agency working has been emphasised for many decades, as you all know, but it's still not achieving the impact that it must have. There are examples of excellent multi-agency practice, but too often we see critical life-changing decisions being taken for children by children's social care alone, or only with superficial and partial involvement from other agencies. We need to see genuinely joint, challenging, rigorous decision making every time there are concerns that a child may be suffering significant harm. The overarching recommendations for system change focused really on those 3 areas, and that was multi-agency child protection units. Establishment of these teams would be staffed by professionals with the highest levels of child protection expertise and experience, and we'll see the key child protection agencies of the police, health and social care working together seamlessly as a single team. This does not mean that the highest levels of child protection expertise are not also held elsewhere, for example, by those overseeing the practice of those working with children in need. It does mean, though, that there will be a consistent and highly skilled group of multi-agency and multidisciplinary professionals leading statutory child protection practice in each local area. The review identified good practice where a front door, a MASH model, etc., was used in areas to promote multi-agency decision making in all cases, but particular child protection cases. So national multi-agency practice standards was a very clear recommendation, and that was the panel think that alongside developing multi-agency child protection units, there's also an opportunity to level up the quality and consistency of MASH models across the country. They believe that the proposed multi-agency child protection standards should underpin this. To support the development of those standards, the National Panel also recommended Government Commission for a more up-to-date evaluation of child protection in England MASH models to establish more clearly the key success factors and different operating models to ensure a ministerial group is created at government level to oversee the implementation of these new arrangements. So I'm just going to pause a second and really think about what your initial thoughts about that, because that's a task, a massive task for the system-wide individual local authorities as well as partner agencies. You want to just put your comments in the chat and we'll pick them up later.
Thank you, Kevin. Did you want to go through the chat or did you want me to carry on from where?
I did want to go through the chat, but I don't think I can see it from my side at the moment, Chris.
You click on the chat box, it should come up. I don't know if anyone's shared any reflections as yet. So it might be worth picking them up a bit later.
I think we will do, yes. Actually, I have just clicked on it and there isn't.
I'm sure people will put some through it as we carry on. So if it's okay with you, I'll move on. So
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris.
So the 4 key themes that were identified in the review publication, I'll go in now and explore in more details. The first one was about listening to families and the lived experience and the day in the life of a child, the impact of domestic abuse and professional curiosity and over-optimism. I think these are probably key themes that come out of a lot of serious case reviews and learning that we've come through. So the first theme is in regard to listening to families. Every time I read this, I just think you can't say this with enough impact. When you look at Arthur, 130 bruises were found on his body, which for me is so significant, and I always have to take a second just to consider just how significant that is. Blood test indicated very high levels of sodium, suggesting possibility of salt poisoning. I think it really highlights that listening to families and children and understanding a day in the life is vital when understanding when we intervene in the right way at the right time. You can see from all of this, and I'll go through that actually Arthur and Star's family did share their voice with agencies working within the safeguarding system. Who shared Arthur's voice? Well, his paternal grandparents, his paternal uncle and maternal grandmother all shared concerns regarding Arthur having bruises with police and children's social care and their concerns that he was being abused. When we come to Star, photographs that the police had taken show a really sad child with many bruises on legs, arms and face. And they're in stark contrast to early photos of a happy child that her extended family had taken. And after her death, there was evidence that she's been physically abused on numerous occasions. Again, just as with Arthur, her voice was shared by her great-grandmother, a grandfather, and they'd shared concerns regarding her care, as did her father and uncle when she had bruises to her face. On the next slide, we're going to move on to seeing a video of the social worker who was sharing the family's voice for Arthur, which I think is really important for us to hear and consider.
Arthur's paternal grandmother got in touch with you, didn't she, about the bruising?
Yes, she did. I was at work, I think it was the 16th of April. I was doing a 7/7 shift and Joanna sent me a text message and I thought, Joanna Hughes, I haven't heard from her for ages. So automatically you panic.
Of course.
So I phoned her and said, you know, what is it? And she said, oh, it's nothing to worry about, don't worry. And I said, well, I'm working till 7, I'll be home about 8. And shortly after that, I thought, I can't work the rest of my shift without knowing what's happening. So I phoned her and she said, is it all right if Chris, that's her husband, and I come round tonight? So they came round at 9 o'clock on the evening and I said, what, you know, you need to fill me in, what's going on? And Joanna said they'd found bruises on Arthur. And I said, bruises? And Chris said, have you got them? And she said, they're on my phone. So she went and got her phone out of the car and she showed me. And straight away, I said, those are non-accidental injuries.
You're a nurse, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Straight away, I said, these are non-accidental injuries. I said, they're caused by an adult hand. I said, his right shoulder, I can see three fingers. I said, his left shoulder, I said, that has been caused by hitting with something or being pushed against something. But the most disturbing thing to me, and I said this to Chris and Joe, I said, there's new bruises on top of old,
God.
which tells me this has been going on. And, you know, there's yellow bruises, there was purple bruises, all over. His back.
Take your time.
And I just seen them, I just imagined the pain Arthur would have been in, receiving those bruises. So Joanna and Chris said they'd phoned social services. So obviously about 9:30 at night, there wasn't a lot I could do. So thank you. So the following day, I phoned social services and I was told that they'd been out the day previously and they didn't find anything untoward. There was no bruises visible. So with that, I phoned the police. Again, I was told by the police, we were there yesterday, the house was immaculate. And I said, so an immaculate house doesn't constitute child abuse then? And he said, well, you know, we've got nothing to answer to, you know. And that was that. So
it's probably important to note all we have heard for the last 2 days when talking about this story is how this is a multi-agency response and how you need to contact social services and the medics and the police. You called social services.
Yes.
You called the police. I presume you feel quite angry.
I am angry. I am angry with the interagencies because somewhere along the line, communication hasn't been passed along. Now, the old adage, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. Well, something is broke.
I think everyone will agree that it's a very impactful video. These are the lessons learned for Arthur and Star, especially in regard to challenging assumptions of ourselves and others within the safeguarding system and ensuring that we remain a critical friend, but most importantly, with healthy scepticism. Contacts by family members viewed as malicious. Is it malicious or is it unsubstantiated? Agencies not sure what to do with photographs, how to store, and worries that images are of the right child. Not enough weight given to what the images are showing. Children who are mobile do bruise, fall and fight, but question the need for a CP medical. And we need to be considering underlying injuries and injuries that have been seen by others. The paediatric view not being sought or multi-agency strategies held to consider causes and think the unthinkable. The multi-agency approach really strengthens information sharing and safety planning. Professional optimism. This is a big thing. I spend a lot of time talking to my own team about it. Arthur had been exposed to past trauma. His father stated he had concerns in relation to his behaviour, and CAMS services had reviewed him and acknowledged trauma, but they were very much parent-led and saw father as protective as he was providing stability for Arthur since he left mother's care. And Arthur's behaviour being linked to past trauma with no exploration of what could be happening for him at the time. We need to think about how we can listen better. There's good practice areas identified to support listening to children and families better. It's about that think family approach, gathering information from those who knew the child. Rather than viewing information as malicious, viewing it as unsubstantiated, I think that change of language is really, really important to think about. and it's in need of exploration. Documenting names of family members, new partners, changes in partners and people who may care for the child. Do they bring support and safety, or do they possibly bring harm and risk? And what do we know about them? Who's in the room when we're there and visiting, and asking who they are and what involvement they have with the child. Considering use of the family trees, genograms across agencies with a willingness to share what you know if you're concerned. Be professionally curious. What is the child's behaviour trying to tell you? Think. What do you see when you look at me, the child? How does my world around me affect me? And what is my daily lived experience? Arthur and Star had both lived with extended family members, and what was this loss like for them when the ties were cut and contact stopped? Considering the partnership, past, present and potential harm, and considering the unthinkable rather than accepting the immediate solutions. So I'll move on to the theme now for Learning 2, which was the day in the life of a child. And that's over to Emma Bradley.
Okay, so we're going to talk about the day in the life of a child. So this is a direct quote from the review with regards to understanding Star's life. Professionals had only a limited understanding of what daily life was like for Star, beyond a superficial assessment from one-off visits, which did not build on any historic known by each agency. Star experienced a high level of disruption due to constant moves throughout her short life. No professionals understood this. The fact that she may have been experiencing serious and systematic physical and emotional abuse was never really considered or addressed. Okay, so we're going to think about what can we learn from Arthur and Star's experiences. There were 4 recurrent themes identified in the review, and we're going to start thinking now about how do we get it right. So the themes identified were there was a lack of limited direct work with the families. There was a lack of reflection and further exploration into how the children and families presented themselves during visits. There were gaps in specialist skills around interrogating and analysing evidence. The versions of events given by parents were too readily accepted, and photos provided by wider family members weren't properly examined. And in both cases, the professionals were often kept at arm's length by those who were perpetrating the abuse. Okay, so we can get it right, and these are the best practice guidelines for understanding a day in the life of a child or family. Okay, so what's happening when we get it right? It's when we focus on the children and actively listen to what their words and their behaviours are telling us in a variety of environments. It's when we observe children and analyse what this tells us and use this to underpin our decision making. It's when we ensure that we consider what daily life is like for the children we work with, seeking a healthy challenge when it's not clear to us, going back with more questions. When we're getting it right, it's when we seek information from a variety of sources to consider what the child's day looks like, not just taking information from the family at face value. And finally, it's looking at when we look at what each child has experienced in their lifetime and consider what that might tell us about their needs. So recognising their histories and using those to inform what we're seeing now. Okay, so what practical action can we take to support understanding a day in the life of a child? Practitioners should always spend time observing children when they're visited and spend time with the children. Even the non-mobile ones or non-verbal children can tell us how they feel. Doing direct work about daily life can be really illuminating, using toys or worksheets. Setting expectations right at the beginning, telling parents and carers that you will be spending time with their child, and this is a key part of you assessing their needs. Being curious about what the child's day looks like. If it's unclear, think about why. Is it because we need more information, or is the child being hidden within the parental interactions? Talk to other professionals about what they've observed with the child. Does it fit with what you're seeing or hearing? And if there are differences, what's your hypothesis about this? And finally, if parents are reticent for you to spend time with their children, be curious about why and explore with other agencies what this means. Okay, so we need to open our eyes and we need to understand the lived experience of the child and family and what children and families are seeking to communicate with us. Okay, so when we're reading the National Review, there are the failures of the 3Rs+1, and that's recognition, referral, responses and responsibility. So recognition, that's about being able to be professionally curious to identify signs and symptoms through overt appearance, understanding and recognising behaviours and the voice of the child, and analysing what a child's changing behaviour or circumstances may be seeking to communicate with us as a safeguarding system. Knowing the children and families we work with really well and truly understanding their voice and experience. Referrals. We need to consider robust referrals to both the local authority, but also community-based support that we can refer and signpost families to that's responsive to their individual needs. Responses. We need to respond in a multi-agency, trauma-informed response while being able to offer sensitive professional challenge to the community and other professionals within the safeguarding system. Responsibility, that's about everyone taking ownership and responsibility for acting on safeguarding needs with the multi-agency system, with the right policies and procedures, but more importantly, the right safeguarding culture in each setting and also across the system. Okay, Christina, back to you.
Apologies, I couldn't unmute myself. Let me just catch up with my slides a sec. So, theme for Learning 3. Domestic abuse and what went wrong. It's really important, and what I will cover is the changes in legislation that have led to children being recognised in their own right as victims. Importantly for this, the biological parents of both Arthur and Star were not fully aware of the new partner's previous domestic abuse. In Star's case, a safeguarding referral was made to children's social care by the local domestic abuse provider. However, Savannah Brockhill was not named on that referral. At the time, both Star and Arthur were living in households where there was domestic abuse that would not have been classified as victims. An extended family expressed concerns about both child abuse and domestic abuse, yet those concerns were dismissed. Important is some of the facts and statistics of domestic abuse, and I think it doesn't matter how many times you hear them, they're still very impactful and we need to take time to consider and think about them. Living in a home where domestic abuse happens has a serious impact on a child or young person's physical and mental well-being, as well as their behaviour, and that can last into adulthood. 1 in 5 children, that's massive, 1 in 5 under the age of 18 will have lived with an adult perpetrating domestic abuse. Data from 2020 suggests that children and young people make up more than half of those who live in a refuge. And domestic abuse was a factor in over 40% of child safeguarding practice reviews, which just shows what a massive issue and concern it is. Children who witness domestic abuse may also be at greater risk of being violent in the future. There were reports, 11,436 reports of DA made to ANS Police in Bristol up until the end of 2021. Wow. Across ANS Police as a force, domestic abuse makes up around 20% of all recorded crime. What I'll go on to talk about is the new legislation, the Domestic Abuse Act 2021. The new statutory definition emphasises that domestic abuse is not just physical. We need to consider emotional, controlling or coercive and economic abuse. It also extends the controlling or coercive behaviour offence to cover post-separation abuse. For the first time following the passing of the Act, children who live in a home where domestic abuse takes place are now being recognised as victims in their own right rather than just witnesses. This change gives them more rights and should ensure locally commissioned services consider and address the needs of children in addition to the adult victims. The law provides a new domestic abuse protection notice and a domestic abuse protection order, and places guidance on supporting the domestic violence disclosure scheme, which is Clare's law, on a statutory footing. So controlling and coercive behaviours. I think it's really important to take some time to think about these, which is around the constant criticism, gaslighting, monitoring, isolation from family and friends, denying freedom, making accusations, parental alienation, financial control, blackmailing and violent threats, regulating sexual relationships, and living by your partner's rules. I think it's important to note that a lot of people don't always recognise these or see them as controlling and coercive behaviours. But what can we do as practitioners to do differently? We need to think about the DVDS scheme and if we should be encouraging people to pursue an application or submitting one on their behalf. Be professionally curious and ask questions which glean further information. Making sure we get full and accurate information gets reported on the interagency referral forms. And also there's using the online reporting tool to report a crime or intelligence which doesn't require an emergency response. Ensuring the MARIC referral for high risk cases. Keep up our own CPD and our training around domestic abuse. Language matters. In Bristol, we want to change the language to enable a more conscious and trauma-informed approach for victims of domestic abuse and sexual violence. I think for me, it is so important, and I'll go back again around that professional curiosity and asking questions. And if you need to move people to an environment where they need to go somewhere else, or you need to think, actually, I need to talk to this person in a place where it's a safe space for them, we need to be thinking about that. I'm handing back to Emma to talk about our theme for Learning 4.
Okay, so our fourth theme for learning was around professional optimism and curiosity. So this is another quote from the review publication. They said assessments were often overly optimistic and lacking professional curiosity in testing out parental self-reporting. They were too parent-focused and were not always considering all adults in the household. Okay, so what is professional curiosity? It's having the capacity and communication skills to explore and understand what's happening with an individual or with their family. It requires professionals not to accept things at face value, but to be inquisitive and also not to make assumptions. The professionals need to think outside the box and consider people's circumstances holistically. It's about inquiring more deeply, using proactive questioning and challenge. And curious professionals engage with individuals and families through visits, through conversations, their observations, and asking relevant questions to gather historical and current information. So thinking about what skills are needed to exercise professional curiosity, looking. What do you observe in the home environment? Do the homes in the house and garden tell you anything about the way the family might live day to day? What do you see in the presentation of the child and family? What do you observe in the body language of the members you see? Are the family happy for you to take a look around the house? And if not, might this tell you anything? What behaviours do you see, and what does this tell you? And does what you see conflict with anything you already know or have been told? Listening. Who speaks in the family? And as importantly, who doesn't speak? And what might this tell you? Are you told things you need to clarify? Are you concerned about the things you're told? Are you concerned about the things you may not be told? Is someone trying to talk to you but finding it difficult to express themselves? And if so, why might this be? Or are you being told conflicting information? Asking. Take some time to think and plan out your visit. What do you know from the history that might need exploration? What have you been told about the current situation that needs further exploration? Who else might be able to provide you with helpful information about the child or family situation? And what information appears to be missing? And what questions might you ask to try and ascertain this? And then checking things out. Who else knows this child and family? What can they tell you? Are the opinions of others the same? And if they differ, what might be the reason for this? Is the same information being told to the same people? And if it's different, has it been changed or explored? Has it been challenged or explored? What are or might be the reasons for this? Are others concerned? And what evidence do they have for their worries? And what have they done to try and address this? What have you read to date? And how does this fit or not with new information that you're being given? So, what gets in the way of professional curiosity? So I'd be really grateful if you could put in the chat function what you think barriers to professional curiosity might be. So, yeah. I'm not sure if people can see the chat. So far we've got time and confidence, which I think are both massive ones. Evasive parents. Data quality, forgetting the holistic picture. Any other thoughts? Fear of getting it wrong. Yeah, I think that's something we all worry about. Confrontative situations. Parents who are very good at grooming professionals. One that I would add is an overwhelming workload, which is links with time. Any other thoughts about what barriers to professional curiosity might be? Yeah, capacity. Okay. Yeah, people worrying if they're wrong and asking the neighbours what does that do for the parents and any risks, and professionals fearing exaggerating the situation. So yeah, I think there's lots of barriers to why we find it hard. So moving on to the next slide. So this is a description of when practitioners can exercise professional curiosity. I'll read them in case they're not very clear on your screens. If they're able to walk in the shoes of the person and consider the situation from their lived experience. If they can see the child or family in a range of settings, alone and also in the context of their family. If professionals aren't reliant on a singular view, whether that's of a family member or a member of the network around the child. When the professional understands the cumulative impact or multiple or combined risk factors, such as the trigger trio, or thinking about gathering information within this context. Having an analytical and reflective approach to their work and the information they gather from a range of sources. Having good management support and good quality supervision. Having the skills, confidence and knowledge to hold difficult conversations and being happy to raise concerns and challenge that information appropriately. And appreciating that respectful scepticism or nosiness and challenge are healthy. Questioning what you're told is okay as long as you're going to do it in a respectful way. The Keeping Bristol Safe Partnership held a webinar yesterday to support holding courageous conversations and having healthy scepticism that will be available for all professionals, and as also the KBSP are developing a training course based around this for in-person training to develop these skills further in our workforce. Kevin, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Emma. I think there's lots of information already that we presented that needs time to digest. However, what we've highlighted here is some key top tips to take away, really trying to hold dear to your practice. That is about building relationships, spending time to get to know children and their families and understanding the network. Question your own assumptions about how families function. As we've recently said, don't be overly optimistic. Healthy skepticism is good. And be willing to have those challenging conversations with professionals and with family members. Expect the unexpected, think the unthinkable, and believe the unbelievable. There's two acronyms really that I think they're really good in terms of helping us focus in our practice, and that is the DEAL acronym, i.e. I need to point out something that you may not be aware of, and that's in discussions with family and with professionals, and describe it. I need to point out that every time I ask a question, you interrupt me, but then explain this makes it difficult to progress matters and will take me much longer to finish. And therefore the action is please do not interrupt, and then please allow me to finish my question. I'll do for you. And then likely is, if you keep interrupting me, I'll have no other option than to end the meeting. And I also think the EARS acronym is really good as well, and that is being elicit, amplify, reflect, and then start over. Understand history to consider cumulative impact and combine risk factors. Chronology is a really good sort of tool to help you understand that. And then articulate your intuition into an evidence-based professional view. Take those away, try and fit those within your practice going forwards. But as far as Bristol is concerned, what are we assuring ourselves at the moment in time based on what we've heard, based on the recommendations that came out of the national review? So as we know, or you may not know, Bristol has a co-located MASH hub, and that's located at Bridewell Police Station. And the main aim is literally to come together as a multi-agency decision-making forum. The assurance of the co-located MASH professionals within the initial decision-making needs to continue between partners throughout the CP process to ensure robust multi-agency decision-making, review and engagement with the family is done throughout that child protection pathway that leads us into strategy discussions that may lead us down the child protection conference route. So this will continue to be audited from an assurance point of view and quality assured by the Keeping Bristol Children's Partnership as a collective ownership, and parents that they have lived experiences that are part of the parents' participation project. Staff specialist provisions, and that is regular workforce reviews to ensure staff retention, but skills in that specialism needed within Bristol's safeguarding system for child protection. And support for staff in their skills and experience. I think we know the challenge about Bristol facing with regard to recruiting and retaining experienced children's workforce across the whole of the system. And that is in the context of significant national workforce shortages and increasing demand. This is well understood strategically and has been considered in a partnership context. So the partnership training offer is well developed and delivered across multiple mediums in short briefing papers to webinars, like for instance this one, that are free to access and complement the longer training sessions, including a domestic abuse course that was co-produced with survivors of domestic abuse and sexual violence. Bristol's Children's Services have implemented a systemic social work model of practice, and that's to assist ensuring intervention is proportionate at the right time and the right place. This now is offered as a training awareness program to multi-agency workforce, and Bristol are the pilot site for the systemic SEND program. Lots of things going on. Bristol Children's Services work collaboratively with the A&S Police Service to deliver the training on child protection, trained officers interviewing children, evidence, achieving best evidence. We also continue to run the multi-agency critical incident exercise program at least once a year, often more frequently. The Director of Children's Services leading on the Children's Partnership, developing options for a cross-partnership recruitment and retention project. So we're all coming together to understand what those challenges are, and we're not working in our own little silos. Avon and Somerset Police have recently upskilled their workforce with domestic abuse matters, and that is specific training available to all police personnel across their force area. Bristol City Council have trained their staff and in the Safe and Together Institute model and developed advanced practitioners within the council to support and intervene with families where domestic abuse features. And I think from a social care perspective, that intervention is very, very welcomed by our staff. There's a heavy focus within all of this training on cohesive and controlling behaviours, assessing risk, professional curiosity and trauma, and domestic abuse informed practice. Health colleagues have access to single agency training, including child protection and domestic abuse across the health footprint from the ICB to Serona, MBT and so on. Each organisation requires staff to attend single agency and multi-agency safeguarding training relevant to their role. The NHS expects staff to comply with the intercollegiate guidance on safeguarding training, which outlines the competencies, knowledge and skills required for various roles. There is a requirement for health staff to attend safeguarding refresher training at regular intervals in accordance with the intercollegiate document. Our colleagues in the police, especially in Operation Ruby, their team specialises in child protection inquiries. They are really looking at a long-term established team there, and that was after initial pilot. Information sharing is key, and as we know, the Bristol information sharing agreements are currently under review to ensure that they are robust, that we share the right information in a timely way. There are pockets of excellent practice, such as the arrangements in place to share information through the Think Family database and Connecting Care. Children's services have to update or have up-to-date privacy notices in place. Currently, there's an overarching Tier 1 agreement. New Tier 2 ISAs are required to aid better information sharing. So there's lots going on with regard to people having the right information, and more importantly, at the right time. Professional curiosity at the front door, that's got to be ongoing, ingrained within our practice. And the data from a recent audit done by the Partnership of First Response suggests that family contacts are taken seriously and triangulated appropriately with other sources of evidence. There's been a focus by our Family's First Response teams on ensuring that family information is considered in a balanced way based on the learning from various different reviews. However, recent auditing by Drugs Services and Children's Social Care have identified themes of parents' self-reports being taken at face value. Again, parental reports, no curiosity, with insufficient curiosity of triangulation with drug services. Some learning needs there. Some more focused specific auditing may help the partnership consider the weight given to different evidence sources in decision making. Work required to ensure risk analysis in the partnership is strong. Ensuring professional curiosity is also a core theme that runs through all our interagency training courses, and that's offered through the partnership. I think I'm going to hand over to Natalie.
Thanks very much, Vasila. So thanks very much, Kevin. So firstly, I just want to thank everybody for coming and attending today's webinar. It's really important that you can understand and hear that learning and how we can continue to improve our practice in Bristol's safeguarding system. Firstly, I'd encourage everybody to read the full report, but the NSPCC have also produced a really helpful summary of the full report of the National Child Safeguarding Practice Review. We will put the links into the chat function. I'll put a reminder of them in. And what I will say is both the slides that have been shared today by our excellent facilitators, the links to the reports and also the recording of today's webinar will be made available on the Keeping Bristol Safe Partnership on our webinar page, our dedicated webinar page. But if I could ask my colleague Amelie to pause the recording for now, and then we will open to any questions and answers that people wish to ask in that safe space.